Practitioners and researchers agree. Meaningful collaboration within a school presents the greatest challenges and the greatest payoff for real school improvements. Let's look at the obstacles to true collaboration using Michael Fullen's analysis.
If we start with what kinds of school cultures are out there, the first of the three problematic ones is the individualistic culture, which goes back to the traditions of teaching, where teachers just kind of live and let live.
I appreciate you all being willing to give up your planning time today to talk with me about the exemplary writing program for the state of South Carolina. As you know, the research...
I'm already doing this. If it weren't for Steve, we wouldn't even be here now.
Is all change good? Where's the evidence that this works?
I'm a good teacher. Why do I have to collaborate? My students are doing just fine.
He's got some good points, but I'm sure not going to admit that in this crowd.
How do you address the challenges this scene presents? You may want to take a minute to discuss this. We will share some strategies to approaching those common difficulties after the next two scenes.
A second kind that's problematic is we call balkanized, is when you have cliques in the school, and cliques are very deep-rooted sometimes internal to the clique. There's a lot of loyalty for those 4 or 5 people in there that don't have much to do with the rest of the school. Cliques are very hard to change. I would say the only way to change them in some ways is to hope for early retirement or people leaving, because they're very deeply embedded, and quite often they've got strength in numbers. That is the clique numbers.
Yeah, yesterday in my mailbox got the final NWA scores, took them home last night, took a look at them, and it's really easy to see which members of our team have accomplished certain skills, which kids are lacking in what areas. Now as a team we've got to start talking about what are we going to do with these scores, how are we going to use them.
Well, I was actually thinking of not necessarily small groups within classes, because there's not enough time to do that within one class period. They would need to actually be divided up, according to their ability, and placed into a classroom with all like abilities.
I think we should put the kids in separate classes.
Sounds like tracking to me.
I don't think that that's tracking, because they can always go into other classes depending on what level they're at in that particular subject. We're not talking about every subject. We're only talking about what they're low in.
I agree. I think we should put them in different classrooms.
Sounds like another name for tracking to me.
The third one is contrived collegiality, and that's harder to get at in some ways, because teachers are getting together in committees, but they're not doing much of substance in between that, so it's superficial. So that's why we make the distinction between a structural change and a cultural change. We say changing the structure to get a site-based team is not enough. You really have to get into looking at the changing teaching and looking at the achievement of students and make that part of the conversation of teachers. So the strategy is for the contrived is to get at the reculturing and get examples of it and build on it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you see in front of you that we have finalized the vision statement for the school. We've been working on...
Remember Bill from our last segment on prevention and intervention systems for low-achieving students? Bill seemed to go along with the majority in the meeting, but did not act accordingly afterwards. In that case, the principal chose to confront the behaviors after the meeting. What are some alternative strategies that could be used?
And then the fourth one, which is really implicit in what I've said, is the collaborative culture, where we push to see that happen more and more, support it, identify it, and then we start to add cautions. We say collaboration isn't everything, because people can collaborate to do the wrong thing. The collaboration we're thinking of has an open-endedness, a kind of an inquiry, an ability to deal with the outside and incorporate new ideas and diversity. It's not a sealed-in or closed collaboration that I'm talking about.
That's about it. As soon as I get everything in, then we'll get back together and we'll divide everything up. Is there anything else before we leave?
Yes, since we have a few extra minutes today, a concern that Ms. Silvers and I both have is that science is being taught on PAC this year, and it's being tested on PAC this year. Social studies is being field tested on PAC this year. And we will be held just as accountable as you all, but we only have half the time to teach the kids in. And that's something that we want to bring before the team and see if it's something you can do to help us out. Give us a little bit more time.
I understand that. Probably by the time the students get in, you check roll, they get settled, you get all your materials and things gathered for your lab, class is probably up. So that is certainly understandable.
Well, what I understand through the state, isn't there a set amount of minutes that each subject has, and doesn't math and science have a different amount of time? I mean, isn't it set by standards?
As we went to block scheduling,
We double-blocked math and double-blocked language arts. That made some science or social studies teachers feel like that they may not be getting the time they needed to cover those standards they're going to be held accountable for. When that occurred, we needed to have a spirit of collaboration to make sure that that was worked out.
I realize you have a lot of reading material in social studies and science that is difficult, and Mrs. Evans and I would be more than glad to take some of your reading material and use it for our self-selected reading during the week. We have 2 30-minute periods, Wednesdays and Fridays, to do self-selected reading, so we could take some of your material and allow the children to read during that time.
Like for reading strategies and things like that? What do you think, Todd?
That would be wonderful. That would be great. That would be very helpful.
Real helpful. And maybe if you could get us information that you're going to be doing the following week, Ms. Shaw and I could even get together and make sure that our questions that we come up with, that they are packed-like questions. So not only are you reinforcing your science and social studies skills, but also how these questions should be answered. For example, using complete sentences. Make sure you're bringing in details from what you've read and other things.
This sounds great, but that time thing is still a problem.
Well, I know from a mathematical aspect, me and Miss Alderman, we can help with the measuring. I know they do a lot of the measuring in the science and even doing the measuring with the maps and everything, and we can do that. And I know from my student teaching last year at the high school, they said that the one thing that their biggest deficiency was their measuring skills.